If a driver out on a route forgets to turn off the battery saver mode on their Android phone, the medical transportation company they work for could lose $50,000 a year.
Which is just a wild number to think about.
I mean, $50,000. And that is not a hypothetical scenario or some kind of weird rounding error. That is a direct, measurable consequence of how incredibly fragile the margins and the data requirements are in the world of non-emergency medical transportation, or NEMT as it's known.
Yeah. It's a brutal industry from a logistical standpoint.
It really is. So welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are looking at a massive stack of system architecture blueprints, compliance audits, and internal operational playbooks from a company called SwiftAid Transport. And if you're looking through these sources, you quickly realize that moving vulnerable patients from point A to point B, well, it isn't just a logistics problem.
No, not at all.
It is a massive, high-stakes data routing problem. So our mission today is to unpack exactly how SwiftAid pulls this off. We're going to explore their specific playbook for utilizing Zoho One, which is this massive suite of over 40 business applications to achieve total operational transparency.
And, to maintain strict HIPAA compliance and keep patients safe. Because the sheer volume of data required to legally and honestly profitably move a patient from their home to a medical facility is just staggering.
Right.
We are looking at a space where transportation providers have to simultaneously act as fleet managers, healthcare compliance officers, and data security experts, all at the same time.
Which is a lot to ask of a transport company.
Exactly. And the sources we're unpacking today detail SwiftAid's specific strategy to handle that immense friction. They've effectively bypassed standard off-the-shelf transportation software.
This just doesn't cut it.
Right. And instead, they built a custom operational nervous system using Zoho One. They manage everything from HIPAA compliant data routing to really granular vehicle maintenance right there in the ecosystem.
So to understand the scale of what SwiftAid actually built, I think we first have to look at the baseline environment they're operating in. Because if you look at standard NEMT fleets, they are almost universally plagued by what enterprise architects call point solutions.
Ugh, point solutions.
Yeah, the dreaded point solutions, meaning you have one piece of software that handles dispatch. Then you have a completely separate, disconnected spreadsheet for vehicle maintenance.
And probably a third, completely isolated HR database for driver certifications.
Exactly. And that fragmentation, well, the sources make it clear that it's the root cause of almost every catastrophic failure in medical logistics.
I mean, it makes sense. When your systems don't share a single source of truth, you introduce data silos. And in a standard tech company, a data silo might mean, delayed marketing email.
Right, an annoyance.
Exactly. But in NEMT, a data silo means a bariatric patient is left waiting on a curb in the heat for 2 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, because the dispatch software simply didn't communicate to the fleet management software that the only available bariatric van was pulled offline for a hydraulic lift inspection.
That's a huge liability and a terrible experience for the patient.
It's unacceptable. And the sources highlight that SwiftAid recognized this structural flaw really early on. They realized you just cannot run a cohesive, life-critical service on fractured software. So they adopted Zoho One not just as a tool set, but as a completely unified data ecosystem.
I want to break down what that ecosystem actually looks like in practice based on those architecture blueprints we've got.
Yeah.
At the front end, they are running Zoho CRM to manage facility partnerships.
Which is super important.
Yeah, because in NEMT, the client relationship is incredibly complex. You have this dual entity structure. The hospital or the nursing home is the referring partner generating the trip, but the patient in the back of the van is the actual end user.
Right, and the CRM has to map those relational dynamics perfectly.
Exactly. Then, layered right next to that, they use Zoho Desk to ingest and track customer support tickets.
Which ensures that if, say, a social worker at a clinic reports a late pickup, that data is instantly visible to the account managers inside the CRM. There's no delay.
Yeah, no one's waiting for an email forward. And then backing up the administrative side, the sources show a really heavy reliance on Zoho People and Zoho Recruit for the HR infrastructure.
Oh, the HR side of this is wild. Managing driver compliance in this industry is relentless.
Because it's not just checking if a driver has a valid driver's license.
No, not at all. You have to track CPR certifications, defensive driving course renewals, very specific wheelchair securement training. I mean, if a driver's defensive driving certificate expires at midnight and they dispatch at 6 a.m. the next morning, that entire trip becomes an unbillable liability.
Wow, so the whole trip is basically done for free, or worse, you get fined.
Exactly. And by keeping all of this inside the same environment where they store their standard operating procedures, they use Zoho WorkDrive for that. They create an environment where operational policy and HR compliance are fundamentally linked.
But looking at this architecture, there is a massive, glaring contradiction that I think we really need to address here.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the entire premise of adopting a unified operating system like Zoho One is to eliminate third-party point solutions. You want everything under one roof.
Right.
Yet the sources explicitly highlight that for their core function, the actual dispatching and routing of the vehicles, SwiftAid uses a completely separate, specialized application called Bambi.
Ah, yes, the Bambi integration.
Yeah. I mean, if you spend all this time and money building a central nervous system in Zoho, integrating a third-party dispatching tool seems to defeat the entire purpose of having a unified architecture, doesn't it?
I get why you'd say that. It totally looks like a contradiction on the surface. But it actually reveals a highly sophisticated approach to enterprise architecture.
Okay, explain that, because to me, it looks like a point solution creeping back in.
Well, it comes down to the fundamental difference between internal business logic and external operational geometry.
Operational geometry, that's quite a phrase.
Yeah, but think about it. Zoho One is unparalleled at running the internal mechanics of a company. The HR, the financial ledgers, the data security protocols, the support ticketing. It handles the structural reality of the business flawlessly.
Okay, sure.
However, the external logistics of non-emergency medical transportation require algorithmic capabilities that a generalized business operating system simply isn't built to handle natively.
Because routing a fleet of medical vans isn't the same as, like, routing a fleet of delivery trucks dropping off Amazon packages.
Exactly. Packages don't require oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
And they don't have mandatory unchangeable appointment times with cardiologists.
So that nuances everything, right?
Yeah, and specialized NEMT software like Bambi or, other platforms in the space like Ruccini, they're built from the ground up around the specific constraints of medical routing. Bambi utilizes an AI engine that continuously recalculates the geometry of the fleet.
Meaning what exactly? Like recalculating routes based on traffic.
That, but also multi-loading optimizations. It figures out if it's mathematically viable to put, say, a dialysis patient and a physical therapy patient in the exact same van without violating the maximum ride time regulations set by Medicaid.
Oh, because Medicaid says a patient can't be in a van for more than, like, 45 minutes or something.
Right, exactly. And furthermore, platforms like Bambi have pre-built API bridges directly into the massive national Medicaid brokers, like Modivcare or SafeRide.
Okay, I see where this is going. So building a custom API from a generalized system like Zoho directly into those massive, incredibly rigid government broker systems would be an absolute engineering nightmare.
Oh, it would be impossible to maintain. You'd be constantly chasing their updates and dealing with their proprietary data structures.
So by using Bambi, SwiftAid essentially outsources that specific external integration and the heavy algorithmic routing.
Yes. Bambi acts as this highly specialized translation layer. It pulls the trips from the brokers, optimizes the physical routes, and then feeds the resulting financial and operational data back into the unified Zoho environment for the billing, payroll, and analytics.
Okay, that makes sense. Or it really is the ultimate application of using the right tool for the exact right job.
Right. They maintain the unified internal nervous system with Zoho, but they attach a highly specialized AI-driven optical sensor for the external environment with Bambi.
That's a great way to put it. It allows them to leverage the multi-loading optimization tools that reduce dispatcher overhead by massive margins, while still maintaining the centralized administrative control that prevents those data silos we talked about.
Precisely.
So that structural separation makes a ton of sense.
Right.
You let the specialized AI handle the traffic patterns and the broker APIs, and you let the unified OS handle the business. But that transition from the digital architecture into the physical world, that is where things get incredibly messy.
Very messy.
Because managing the actual physical assets, the ADA-compliant vans, the hydraulic stretcher lifts, the onboard oxygen securement systems, that requires a level of granular tracking that most software just completely ignores.
Yeah, and this is where SwiftAid's utilization of Zoho Creator becomes the absolute linchpin of their fleet operations.
So for the listener who isn't familiar, what exactly is Zoho Creator?
So Zoho Creator is a low-code application development platform.
Low code meaning you don't need a team of software engineers writing raw code for months.
Exactly. Instead of forcing a company to bend their operational workflows to match the limitations of some prepackaged software, Creator allows an organization to architect bespoke applications tailored to their exact operational reality. You just drag and drop the logic you need.
It's like digital Legos.
That's a perfect analogy. The blueprints show that SwiftAid essentially built a custom fleet hub management application completely from the ground up using Creator.
And the strategic advantage of a low-code environment here cannot be overstated. I mean, if you buy an off-the-shelf garage management software, it is overwhelmingly likely designed for standard logistics, like flight trucks, delivery vans, maybe rental cars.
Right, so the data schema will be full of fields tracking cargo weight limits or pallet dimensions.
Which are completely irrelevant to a medical fleet. You're just cluttering the screen with useless data fields.
And more importantly, it will lack the specific fields NEMT actually requires. An off-the-shelf app doesn't know how to track the inspection lifecycle of a 4-point bariatric wheelchair tie-down system.
No, it definitely doesn't.
But by using Creator, SwiftAid snaps together the exact data architecture they need. They build the digital environment to match the physical reality of their specialized fleet.
And the level of operational control this provides has to be immense. Through this custom app, they digitize the entire daily inspection process, right?
Oh yeah, when a driver does their pre-trip inspection, they aren't just checking boxes on a piece of paper that gets shoved into a glove box and forgotten about.
Which happens all the time in normal fleets.
Constantly. But here, they are uploading high-resolution, time-stamped images of the vehicle's interior and exterior directly into the application from the field using their tablets.
Wow.
The system instantly logs that data against the vehicle's permanent service history. It tracks daily fuel consumption against specific routes, and it ties all of that physical data to the specific driver assigned to the vehicle for that shift.
Which introduces automated preventative maintenance based on actual usage, rather than just random calendar dates. Because in NEMT, vehicle downtime is a critical failure.
It's the worst-case scenario.
Yeah, if a specialized wheelchair van breaks down, you can't just rent a standard sedan from Enterprise to replace it. A breakdown means a patient misses a life-saving appointment.
Right, like dialysis. You can't miss dialysis.
Exactly. So the custom application automatically triggers maintenance alerts based on mileage thresholds or specific driver reports.
And beyond just keeping the vans running, the sources indicate this system is pulling double duty as a really powerful financial forecasting tool.
Okay, how so?
Well, because every piece of maintenance data, fuel cost, and downtime is centralized in Creator, the application can generate localized spending trend analysis.
So like graphs and charts for the management team.
Yeah, management can pull up pre-generated graphs, scrutinizing the total cost of ownership for every individual vehicle. They can look at a specific bariatric van and determine exactly when the maintenance costs begin to outweigh the revenue it actually generates.
Oh, that's smart. So they can appraise its operating potential and strategically cycle vehicles out of the fleet before they become financial liabilities.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of fleet rotation.
There is also a critical human resources layer integrated directly into this Fleet Hub app, which I found fascinating in the sources. We established earlier that managing driver compliance is a nightmare.
Oh, a total nightmare.
Well, the Creator app enforces operational logic by dynamically connecting certified drivers to specific vehicles.
This is one of the coolest parts of the whole system.
Yeah, so if a dispatcher tries to assign a driver to a bariatric stretcher van, but that driver's specific stretcher securement certification has expired over in the HR module.
The system simply flags that mismatch. It won't let the assignment happen.
Right. You enforce compliance at the software level. It completely prevents a human error from resulting in a catastrophic safety violation on the road.
It creates an unbreakable chain of custody between the employee's verified skill set, the physical capabilities of the asset, and the regulatory requirements of the trip.
So we have the internal administrative hub built. We have the physical fleet mapped and maintained through this custom low-code application. The vehicles are ready, the drivers are certified, and the AI dispatcher has mapped the routes.
Sounds like we're ready to drive.
We are. The driver finally hits the road. But the fundamental reality of Medicaid and insurance billing is that successfully dropping the patient off at the clinic is only half the job.
Barely half the job, honestly.
Yeah, because you have to definitively legally prove exactly how you got them there. And that brings us back to the $50,000 battery saver issue we opened the show with.
Yes, the mileage tracking.
Exactly. The entire financial viability of this operation hinges on the precision of mileage tracking.
The stakes here are entirely dictated by the billing mechanics of the industry. I mean, in standard logistics, you get paid for delivering the item, a flat rate usually. In NEMT, Mileage is the primary billable unit.
Right. Medicaid does not just reimburse a flat rate for a trip. They reimburse based on documented, medically necessary mileage.
And the audit standards for verifying the mileage are brutally strict. You cannot just estimate the distance or submit a rounded odometer reading like, oh, it was about 10 miles. No,
They won't accept that.
not a chance. Auditors routinely demand location verification with precision down to zero point 0.1 miles at both the exact pickup coordinate and the drop-off coordinate.
That is incredibly granular.
It is. And if you fail to provide that level of cryptographic proof of a location, the financial penalties are immediate.
The sources detail that without time-stamped, highly accurate breadcrumb trails, transportation providers can face claim denial rates exceeding 20%.
20%?
Yes. If you are operating a modest fleet of 10 vehicles running, say, 500 trips a month, a 20% denial rate equates to hemorrhaging roughly $4,000 every single month.
Which scales up to that $50,000 a year we talked about.
Exactly. That is nearly $50,000 of verified, completed work that simply evaporates because the data trail wasn't dense enough to satisfy an auditor. It's crazy.
It's devastating for a small business. So to solve this, SwiftAid integrates Zoho Expense directly into the driver's daily operational workflow.
Zoho Expense, like the
Mhm.
app you'd use to track business lunches and hotel receipts.
The very same.
Yeah.
But they utilize the platform's automatic mileage tracking feature, which gets deployed on the driver's mobile devices. And this is a massive leap forward from the legacy methods of drivers manually scribbling odometer readings on paper trip sheets.
I can imagine. So how does it actually work under the hood?
Well, the application leverages a combination of the device's GPS hardware and its internal accelerometer to generate an unbroken, automated ledger of the vehicle's movement.
The technical mechanics of how this works in the background are really fascinating, and they explain why the actual device settings are so critical. Because for the application to function autonomously, drivers have to grant specific, elevated permissions on their iOS or Android devices.
Right, it can't just be standard permissions.
Exactly. They have to set location access to always or allow all the time. It cannot be restricted to only tracking when the app is visibly open on the screen.
Because drivers are using other apps, like mapping or dispatch apps, on the screen.
Right. Furthermore, they have to grant access to physical activity or motion sensors on the phone.
And that motion permission is the key to the automation. By reading the accelerometer data, the application can detect when the device transitions from a resting state or walking speed to vehicular speeds.
Oh, so it knows when you get in the van and start driving.
Exactly. It automatically initiates the GPS tracking protocol without the driver having to manually start a trip in the interface. It removes human memory from the data collection process entirely.
That's brilliant. But this high-density data collection, it creates an intense drain on the mobile device's resources.
Massive drain.
Because mobile operating systems are aggressively designed to throttle background applications to preserve battery life. So if an Android phone slips into battery saver or battery optimization mode, the OS will start restricting how often the Zoho Expense app can actually ping the GPS satellites.
Right, to save power. So instead of pinging every few seconds to map a really precise route, it might only ping every few minutes.
And suddenly your high-fidelity breadcrumb trail turns into a low-resolution dotted line that completely misses the nuances of the route.
It might cut right across a lake on the map because it missed 3 turns.
Exactly. And the moment that data resolution drops below that critical threshold,
Mileage becomes unauditable, and the claim gets denied by Medicaid. Period.
it is a stark example of how deeply operational success is tethered to granular technological compliance. The training protocols for drivers have to explicitly cover device state management just as rigorously as they cover wheelchair securement.
You're training tech compliance as much as driving compliance.
Yeah. Now, if you are a driver, having an application continuously monitoring your location and speed at a granular level introduces a massive privacy concern.
Oh, absolutely.
When a driver finishes their shift and drives to a grocery store or takes a weekend road trip with their family, they do not want their employer logging those miles.
And frankly, the employer doesn't want that data either.
Why not?
Because submitting personal miles on a Medicaid ledger constitutes billing fraud. It's a huge mess.
Good point. To mitigate this, the architecture relies on deeply configurable ride classification rules within Zoho Expense. The system is not just a blind vacuum sucking up data 24/7.
Right, there's logic applied to it.
Yeah, administrators, or the drivers themselves, input their specific contracted work schedule into the application logic, defining the exact days of the week and the precise operational hours they are actually on shift.
So if a driver is scheduled from 6:00 a.m. to 4:00 p.m., the algorithmic tracking only categorizes movement detected within that 10-hour window as relevant data.
Precisely that logic. Any vehicular movement detected during those defined operational hours is automatically logged and sequestered into a dedicated module as unexpensed rides.
And movement detected outside of that parameter.
It's either classified as personal or discarded entirely by the system, ensuring an absolute firewall between operational data and personal privacy.
That's a huge relief for the drivers.
And at the conclusion of a shift, the driver workflow is remarkably frictionless. They just open the interface, review the auto-generated list of unexpensed rides for the day, verify the routes look correct, and simply swipe right to convert them into finalized reimbursable expenses.
The elegance of that workflow is that it acts as a dual-layer protection mechanism. It protects the company by ensuring the data submitted to auditors is algorithmic, continuous, and highly accurate.
Yeah.
But it equally protects the driver. It completely eradicates the end-of-the-month administrative nightmare where a driver is trying to reverse engineer their route history from 3 weeks ago
Yeah.
just to ensure they are compensated for their actual mileage.
We've all been there with expense reports. It's awful.
It is. Here, the burden of proof is shifted from human recollection to sensor data.
So we've established how SwiftAid captures the location data with absolute precision. But in the context of healthcare logistics, generating highly accurate location data creates an immediate, massive legal liability.
This is where things get really serious.
Yeah, because when you track a medical transport vehicle, the destination itself is a clinical indicator.
Right. That transition is where the entire regulatory landscape shifts. I mean, if I'm tracking a delivery truck dropping off a package, the location data is just logistics. Who cares?
Right, it's just an address.
But if I am tracking a specialized van, dropping a patient off at a dialysis clinic 3 times a week, that location data explicitly reveals the patient's underlying medical condition.
Yes, we have moved from tracking a vehicle to actively generating and storing protected health information. And that introduces the federal reality of HIPAA compliance.
And you know, the definition of electronic protected health information, or EPHI, in the NEMT space is significantly broader than most people realize.
Really? How so?
Well, it is not just limited to a patient's name, their social security number, or their past medical history. As you pointed out, the destination is EPHI. The specific type of vehicle required, whether they need a bariatric stretcher or an ambulatory sedan, that is EPHI because it indicates mobility status.
The frequency of the trips, too, right?
Exactly. Frequency is EPHI. Every single data point flowing through this unified Zoho architecture is subject to rigorous federal oversight.
So how does a platform like Zoho One, which is fundamentally built as a generalized enterprise suite, handle the intense, specialized requirements of HIPAA? Like if a dispatcher is creating a custom field in Zoho CRM to log a patient's specific oxygen requirements, how does the system distinguish that highly sensitive clinical data from a standard, non-regulated data field like, say, a billing address?
The architecture addresses this through a foundational security mechanism known as the EPHI switch.
The EPHI switch, okay.
Yeah, when a system administrator is configuring the database schema, whether they're building a custom form in Zoho Forms or adding a field in Zoho Books, they are presented with a specific binary configuration option within the data privacy settings.
A literal checkbox.
A little checkbox. They must explicitly designate that specific field as containing EPHI.
But that designation cannot just be a visual label, right? Like a little red warning icon. Checking that box has to trigger a fundamental change in how the database handles that specific string of text.
Oh, it does. The moment that EPHI designation is applied, the system fundamentally alters the storage and transmission protocols for any data entered into that field. It enforces a dual-layer encryption standard.
Break that down for us. What's the first layer?
First, it applies AES 256-bit encryption for data at rest. This means that when the data is physically sitting on Zoho's server hard drives, the information, say, the patient's specific diagnosis, is mathematically scrambled into complex ciphertext.
Meaning that if a highly sophisticated threat actor, like a nation-state hacker, managed to bypass the perimeter security and physically clone the database drives.
The data they extract is entirely useless.
Because they just see a wall of noise.
Exactly. They would possess gigabytes of randomized alphanumeric characters that cannot be deciphered without the unique encryption keys which are managed by the system.
Okay, so that's data at rest. What about data in transit?
Furthermore, the EPHI designation triggers mandatory TLS encryption for data in transit. This secures the data as it travels across the internet from the driver's mobile device back to the centralized servers.
Which prevents man-in-the-middle interception attacks when they're out on the road.
Exactly.
But the sources we are reviewing stress a critical point that is routinely misunderstood in the healthcare tech sector. And I really want you to listen to this because it's vital.
It's the most important point of the whole compliance section.
Implementing AES 256 encryption and utilizing secure cloud-based forms does not automatically make an organization IPT compliant.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Right. You can possess the most robust cryptographic architecture on the planet and still be in blatant violation of federal law if you fail to address the legal framework surrounding the technology.
The technology is merely the mechanism of compliance. It is not the legal shield. The defining legal requirement is the execution of a business associate agreement, or a BAA.
Okay, let's explain the BAA. Under the HIP framework, SwiftAid Transport is classified as a covered entity because they directly handle patient care and billing.
Correct. And Zoho, because it provides the infrastructure that stores and transmits the EPHI, is classified as a business associate.
So the BAA is the legally binding contract that bridges the liability between those two entities.
Exactly. If SwiftAid simply signs up for a standard consumer tier Zoho account, just using a credit card on the website, and starts dumping patient diagnoses into the CRM without executing a BAA, they are immediately non-compliant.
Instantly.
Instantly. The encryption might be working perfectly, but without the contract, the regulatory framework is broken. By signing the BAA, Zoho legally commits to safeguarding the EPHI according to the strictures of the HIPAA security rule.
And they legally bind themselves to specific breach notification timelines if their infrastructure is ever compromised.
The presence of the BAA is what transforms a highly secure database into a legally compliant healthcare application.
And once that legal foundation is set, the operational benefits of the technology become truly transformative. Consider the traditional workflow for patient intake in NEMT.
Oh, the clipboards.
Clipboards. A driver would typically carry a clipboard with physical paper forms into a patient's home to collect signatures consenting to transport and treatment.
Which is an absolute nightmare from a compliance standpoint. You have literal boxes of EPHI sitting in the passenger seat of a van.
Yeah, if someone smashes the window of that van while the driver is inside a clinic, you have a massive reportable HIPAA breach on your hands. You're on the news.
It's catastrophic. But the transition to digitized, encrypted forms completely neutralizes that physical vulnerability.
So how does it work with Zoho forms in the field?
Well, when a driver uses a custom EPHI-designated Zoho form on an iPad to collect a signature, the architectural protections engage instantly. The data does not reside in the local storage of the tablet.
So the iPad itself is effectively blank.
Exactly. The moment the driver hits submit, the data is encrypted in transit via TLS and synced directly to the secure cloud environment. A stolen iPad yields zero patient data.
That is such a relief from a risk management perspective.
Oh, for sure. But securing the perimeter against external theft is only one part of the equation. Enterprise security architecture must also address internal vulnerabilities.
Right, the threat from inside the house.
Exactly. Once the data is securely inside the encrypted cloud environment, the organizational challenge shifts. You have to meticulously control and monitor who, within your own company, is allowed to interact with that sensitive information.
Which requires a deep dive into identity and access management, or IAM, and the deployment of tamper-proof audit trails.
The core philosophy driving internal security in a high-compliance environment is the principle of least privilege.
Okay, define least privilege for us.
It means you do not grant an employee access to the entire database simply because they work for the company. You provision their access rights to the absolute minimum threshold required for them to execute their specific job function.
So no one gets the master keys just to be nice.
Nobody. In the context of SwiftAid's Zoho One deployment, this means highly granular, role-based access controls layered behind multi-factor authentication and single sign-on gateways.
The application of least privilege radically minimizes the internal attack surface. I mean, think about a driver out in the field. When they authenticate into the system, they are dynamically restricted by their role profile.
Right.
They can only view the specific manifest of patients assigned to their vehicle for that specific shift. They cannot browse the historical archives of the CRM, and they cannot view the routing schedules for the rest of the fleet.
It's locked down. Conversely, a billing specialist in the back office has deep access to the financial ledgers and the Medicaid coding modules, but they might be entirely locked out of viewing the daily operational GPS tracking data.
Because they simply don't need to see it to do their job.
Exactly. The only entity with sweeping visibility across the entire architecture is the superadmin.
But the critical safeguard here is that the system does not inherently trust the superadmin either.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, every single interaction within the database is subjected to relentless automated surveillance through the activity logs. This is the mechanism of ultimate accountability.
The activity logs function as an immutable ledger of user behavior. If any employee, regardless of their clearance level, accesses a patient record, the system automatically logs everything.
Like what?
The exact identity of the user, the specific data field they interacted with, a timestamp accurate to the second, and the IP address from which the request originated.
Wow, that's incredibly detailed.
It is. If an employee alters a medical billing code, the log records the original value, the new value, and the exact moment the mutation occurred.
The closest analogy I can think of is a combination of an aviation black box and a highly advanced hotel key card system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because the black box records every telemetry change without the pilot's input, and the key card system records exactly whose badge opened which door at what specific second.
It creates an environment where internal accountability is a matter of algorithmic record. If a discrepancy arises during a Medicaid audit regarding a modified transport time, management does not have to rely on employee testimony. They simply query the immutable log.
We know you changed the drop-off time at 3:14 p.m. from this IP address. It's undeniable.
Exactly. And maintaining those logs is itself a strict regulatory requirement. Auditors require historical access to prove continuous compliance.
So how long does Zoho keep these logs?
The retention policies within the Zoho ecosystem are structured to meet these demands perfectly. For example, if SwiftAid utilizes Zoho Assist to provide remote IT troubleshooting.
Like if a driver's tablet freezes up in the field.
Right, the IT guy remotes in to fix it. The audit data for that remote session is retained for 730 days.
2 years.
2 years of verifiable logs proving exactly what the IT technician accessed during the support call. Similarly, Zoho Forms maintains a 90-day retention window for all form submission edits, allowing compliance officers to trace the exact lineage of any altered patient intake document.
Now, while the internal database is locked down with role-based access and continuous auditing, an NEMT provider still has to interface with external systems.
Unfortunately, yes, they can't exist in a vacuum.
Right. SwiftAid staff have to log into massive state Medicaid portals, third-party clearinghouses, and broker dashboards. And managing the credentials for those external systems introduces a massive vulnerability.
It's often the weakest link.
Because if a dispatcher saves the master password for the state Medicaid portal on a sticky note, or stores it in an unencrypted browser cache, the entire internal security posture is essentially compromised.
It's game over. To neutralize that vulnerability, the operational blueprints show the deployment of Zoho Vault to manage all sensitive external credentials.
What makes Vault different from just saving it in Chrome?
Vault is a highly secure password management application, but its architectural defining feature is its zero-knowledge framework.
The concept of zero-knowledge architecture is really counterintuitive to how most people understand cloud storage.
It really is.
Yeah, because when you use a typical cloud service, you assume the company hosting the data has the ability to view it if they choose to, like Google reading your emails to serve ads.
Right, but with a zero-knowledge system, the provider is structurally incapable of accessing the stored data.
That is the essence of the architecture. When an administrator stores a highly sensitive Medicaid portal password in Zoho Vault, the encryption and decryption processes occur entirely on the client side.
Meaning on the local device's browser, before the data is ever transmitted.
Exactly. The master password used to unlock the vault is never sent across the internet, and it is never stored on Zoho's servers.
So Zoho's infrastructure receives the encrypted ciphertext, and they store that encrypted package, but they fundamentally lack the cryptographic keys required to decipher it.
Meaning if Zoho's own servers were theoretically breached by a state-sponsored actor, the attackers would extract nothing but meaningless scrambled data.
Total security achieved through structural ignorance. I love it.
It's beautiful. So with these layers established, the robust ePHI encryption, the strict IAM policies, the immutable audit trails, and the zero-knowledge credential management, SwiftAid has basically constructed a digital fortress.
They really have. They've neutralized the inherent liabilities of medical logistics.
But the ultimate utility of this architecture is not just defensive. By solving the compliance and operational friction at a foundational level, they have positioned the organization for a massive, frictionless scale.
And scaling an NEMT is notoriously difficult.
It is. Which brings us to the strategic horizon for an organization utilizing this level of automation. How does an NEMT provider leverage this specific technological stack to transition from operating a few local vans to dominating a massive regional territory?
The key lies in the structural economics of the Zoho One platform itself. Most enterprise software scales by essentially penalizing growth.
What do you mean by penalizing growth?
Well, if you use a specialized HR software and you suddenly want to add a performance review module, you have to negotiate a new contract and pay an additional licensing fee. If you want to add a marketing tool, that is another vendor, another integration project, and another recurring cost. It adds up fast.
Right, you get nickel and dime to death.
Exactly. The licensing model of Zoho One circumvents that entirely. Because it is priced on a per-user basis and includes access to the entire suite of 40-plus applications, the friction of deploying new operational capabilities is reduced to near zero.
The tools for scale are already resident in the architecture. They simply need to be activated.
Consider the trajectory of preventative maintenance we talked about earlier.
Right, with the Creator app.
Yeah. Currently, SwiftAid utilizes the Custom Creator app to log driver-reported issues and track mileage intervals. But as the fleet scales to hundreds of vehicles across a state, relying on human reporting becomes inefficient.
So what's the next step?
Because they're operating within the Zoho ecosystem, they can simply activate Zoho IoT.
Internet of Things.
Yes, they can deploy physical telematics sensors directly into the onboard diagnostic ports of the vehicles. These sensors stream real-time engine telemetry, engine temperature, voltage drops, hard-braking events directly back into the unified database.
Oh, wow. So the system transitions from tracking maintenance to algorithmically predicting component failures before they even occur in the field.
Exactly. You change the alternator before the van breaks down with a patient inside.
That's incredible. Another massive avenue for scaling efficiency that I noticed in the sources is addressing the financial drain of patient no-shows.
Ugh, the silent killer of NEMT margins.
Truly. In NEMT, dispatching a vehicle to a patient's home only to discover they canceled their appointment without notifying the transport provider is a total loss of revenue and operational time.
It's infuriating.
To combat this at scale, SwiftAid can leverage the omnichannel communication capabilities that are just sitting there natively in Zoho CRM.
Right, they don't have to buy a third-party SMS tool.
Exactly. They can build automated workflows that trigger SMS, WhatsApp, or voice call reminders to the patient 24 hours before the scheduled pickup, requiring a digital confirmation.
They're essentially deploying the exact same patient engagement tactics used by massive, well-funded healthcare tech companies, but executing it without having to procure new software.
This level of technological sophistication is exactly how specialized, mid-sized fleets survive and dominate against massive disruptors entering the market, like Uber Health, for example.
Well, Uber Health, yeah.
Yep.
The presence of Uber Health in the medical logistics space forces traditional NEMT providers to really compete on efficiency.
But NEMT providers hold distinct structural advantages that a decentralized ride-sharing model simply cannot easily replicate, right?
Absolutely. Uber's algorithmic efficiency is incredible for moving ambulatory individuals from point A to point B.
If I just need a ride to the dentist, sure.
Right. But medical transport is heavily weighted toward complex, high-touch scenarios. You cannot utilize an API to dispatch a random contractor in a standard Honda Civic to safely transport a bariatric patient requiring a reinforced stretcher.
No, you definitely can't.
You cannot rely on a rideshare model for a vulnerable rural patient who requires oxygen securement and needs a driver specifically trained in the hydraulic lift operations of an ADA-compliant vehicle.
Furthermore, recurring transports, like dialysis runs, require a level of localized trust and reliability that a rotating pool of gig economy drivers just struggles to provide. You want the same driver who knows the patient.
Exactly. NEMT providers own the high-complexity, high-margin sector of the market. By deploying the Zoho One architecture alongside specialized routing tools like Bambi, SwiftAid achieves the algorithmic efficiency and the automated administrative overhead of a massive tech disruptor,
while fully retaining the specialized, high-touch healthcare capabilities that define their service. They match the technological scale without sacrificing the clinical nuance.
And if we extrapolate the trajectory of this technology, the next phase of scale moves beyond automation and enters the realm of predictive artificial intelligence.
Let's talk about that. The sources touch upon the future integration of Zia.
Right, Zoho's native AI assistant.
When you have a unified database that has spent years ingesting granular data pickup coordinates, cancellation rates, facility discharge times, seasonal traffic patterns, and vehicle downtime, you possess the training data necessary to fundamentally alter how dispatching works.
Oh, totally. An AI engine analyzing that density of historical data can identify operational patterns that are simply invisible to human dispatchers.
Even the most experienced dispatchers.
Exactly. Zia could theoretically process 3 years of trip data and generate predictive demand heat maps for the fleet manager.
It transitions the entire operational posture from reactive to proactive. Instead of a dispatcher waiting for a broker to call in a trip request, the AI can alert the dispatch desk ahead of time.
Based on historical facility discharge rates and current traffic density, there is an 84% probability of high demand near the Southside Physical Therapy Clinic in 45 minutes. Pre-position 2 ambulatory vans and 1 wheelchair-accessible unit in that sector immediately.
You are predicting the logistical geometry of the city before the demand actually materializes.
That is the ultimate realization of the unified data ecosystem.
Hmm.
Though software is no longer just recording the business, it is actively steering the operational strategy.
We have dissected a massive amount of architectural and operational strategy today, and if you step back and look at the entirety of what SwiftAid Transport has built, the core takeaway is that operational transparency in a highly regulated environment cannot be achieved through sheer willpower or manual oversight.
No, it has to be structural.
Exactly. Transparency is a structural byproduct of deeply integrated systems. By architecting custom solutions in Zoho Creator, enforcing relentless EPHI encryption protocols, and automating highly precise sensor-based expense tracking, they have taken an inherently chaotic, high-risk logistical environment and engineered it into a streamlined, patient-centric service.
They have systematically eliminated the data silos and replaced the friction of disconnected software with clear, continuous, and auditable operational data.
Which leaves us with a fascinating, slightly provocative thought to consider as we wrap up.
I love a provocative thought.
For the duration of this deep dive, we have been analyzing the operations of a transportation company, an organization fundamentally built around people driving vans.
Right, moving metal and rubber.
Yet the level of data security, the complex API integrations, the automated compliance protocols, and the predictive algorithmic logic they deploy rival the architecture of a sophisticated Silicon Valley software firm.
It really does.
And as the broader healthcare landscape continues its massive shift, moving away from centralized, sterile hospitals and pushing care increasingly into the home and the community, the logistics of moving patients and data become the critical bottleneck of care.
The plumbing of healthcare, essentially.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, as the infrastructure of care changes, will the most successful dominant medical providers of tomorrow actually emerge from the ranks of the logistics and data experts of today?
A great question.
Will the organizations that have mastered the chaotic data highway of medical transport ultimately control the future of distributed patient care? Something to think about. Until next time, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.